Hello, my name is Dylan Hoffman. I am a part of the Indiana State DAT program, and with me today is my friend, Jacob. For this instruction, I decided to switch it up a little bit. We're not going to do anything sports medicine related, but I wanted to do a little teaching about gun safety. So we're planning on going to a shooting range later today, and I wanted to just give some information both to Jacob and to those who may be watching this about universal gun safety rules to follow. Whether you're an experienced shooter, and this is your 1000th time handling a firearm, Jacob has handled firearms before, or you're a novice and this is your first time, or you're planning on going to a range for the first time, it's important to understand the 4 universal gun safety rules. So here I have a Ruger LC9. I do want to show the camera. There is a safety clip in here. It's just an orange clip. Additionally, there is nothing in the chamber. Okay, this weapon is completely empty. Again, safety clip inside, just so that those watching can feel comfortable. But Jacob, we're going to go ahead and talk about rule number 1. Rule number 1 is that you always treat a firearm as if it was loaded. So even though we know and we've checked that there's a safety clip in here, okay, there's nothing in the chamber, we're still going to treat this firearm as if it were loaded. Rule number 2, and as you may see, I'm pointing this gun away. If this were a shooting range, this gun is pointed out towards the range. It's not pointed at anybody else sitting here. Right, it's not pointed down at my foot. Okay, this gun is pointed away from anything. And that's because rule number 2 is you never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to destroy. Right? And I'm sure, Jacob, you can agree, you've heard this rule before? Yes, and it seems like a fairly common rule, but as I'll show you in a little bit, people mess this up all the time without even thinking. So, rule number 1 is?
Treat every gun as if it is loaded.
Right, perfect. So we're always going to treat a gun as if it is loaded. Rule number 2?
Never point your gun at anything unless you intend to destroy it.
Awesome. Then, rule number 3 is, as you can see, there's no finger on the trigger. Rule number 3 is you never put your finger on the trigger until you have made the decision to shoot. I have not made any decision to shoot towards anything, therefore my finger stays off of the trigger all the time. Jacob, have you heard about this?
Yes, it's called trigger discipline.
Yes, it's called trigger discipline. That is correct. So we're never going to place my finger on the trigger. Again, sounds common sense, but you will see people mess this up all the time, especially inexperienced shooters. Your finger is going to want to find a place to rest. It's going to want to try and slide down and find a place to rest. So it's important to have that trigger discipline and always keep that finger off. And I'll show you on my left hand here what that looks like. Your finger is always off. Even if you bring it down here, the instinct is for your finger to rest on there. So we're always going to want to keep our finger off of the trigger. Okay, that is rule number 3. And then, Jacob, you've taken this course before. Can you remember what rule number 4 is?
Rule number 4 is know what your target is and what is beyond.
Bingo. So for those of y'all who may be new to this or haven't heard the rules, and just as a refresher for us, rule number 4 is to always know your target and what is beyond. So for example, we're in an apartment. I know that there's a window right over there and that there's nothing beyond it. It's an open field. Okay, so I know exactly what my target would be and what is beyond my target. And that's because you are always responsible for that bullet until it stops. So if you are at a range and you shoot and it goes through 4 targets, travels 2 miles, and strikes somebody or something, you are still responsible for that bullet. That bullet, any bullet that leaves your weapon, you are responsible for. So you always need to know your target and what is beyond your target before you make that decision to pull the trigger. So I'm going to go ahead and unload this. We're going to set the weapon down. Okay. And let's do a quick recap. Jacob, can you tell me the 4 rules again?
First rule is treat every gun as it is loaded. And number 2 is to never point your gun at anything unless you intend to destroy it.
Yes.
Rule number 3 is trigger discipline. Don't put your finger on the trigger unless you're ready to shoot.
Yes.
Rule number 4 is know where your target is and what is beyond it.
That's absolutely right. So I hope you guys have written that down and understand these rules too. Now, as I mentioned before, a lot of times I'll show people this, we'll talk about it. People may have been exposed to these rules before, and they're like, yeah, that's easy, right? Don't point it at anything I'm not gonna shoot. Keep my finger off the trigger until I'm ready to shoot. Treat it as if it's loaded. Know what I'm shooting at. And then they go out to the range or wherever else they're going, and they immediately break almost all of them, right? It's because we get in this mindset, we get out there, and everything we're thinking about kind of slips away. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're going through it. Now, for a demonstration, because we're not going to use my actual weapon, even though it's unloaded, rule number 1, we're always going to treat a weapon as if it were loaded. For this, we're going to use a toy gun. It's got the orange dart. It is a toy gun, shoots darts. Awesome. So we're going to use this. What I want you to do, Jacob, is I'm going to go through a demonstration as if I were at the range. Okay? And I want you to just see if you notice me do anything wrong. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's say that this weapon's sitting here. I come up. This is my firing lane. My range is in front of me here. And bystanders, my friend, are to the back and to the side. So I want you to just watch and tell me if you see me do anything wrong. What'd you see?
When you're trying to load the weapon, you pointed it at me.
Absolutely.
Instead of downrange.
Yes, absolutely. So this is something people will do often. They'll have their weapon, and when they go to load it, instead of clearing the weapon here, they come and they clear it to the side. As you've done this, you've just pointed your weapon at everyone sitting to the side of you, right? So an absolute no-go. Good. All right. Now, for the second demonstration, I'm going to have the gun holstered. So I don't have a holster, okay? But we are going to keep it in my pocket as if this gun were holstered, okay? Now, I want you to watch again and tell me if you see anything wrong. What'd you see?
After shooting the weapon, you didn't practice trigger discipline. You had your finger on the trigger while you're putting it in the holster, and also your arm was in the line of fire.
Yeah.
Putting it in. Yeah.
Great. So the second one, especially something that people don't notice a lot, especially when they're shooting from the holstered weapon, is when they draw the weapon, and as I drew the weapon, I fired the weapon, and then I did not move my finger off the trigger. I left it resting here, right? I left it resting while I loaded the weapon again, right? I shot my weapon. I kept my finger on the trigger. And then this is also really important. As I went to holster it, I crossed, as you can see, I crossed the weapon over my arm. So I actually pointed the gun at my own arm while I was going through it. So I think those are some really important things to understand, right? We always want to treat that gun as if it's loaded, right? We always assume a gun is loaded. We never assume that it's not. We always, rule number 2, make sure that
the gun is not pointed at anything unless you intend to destroy
exactly. The gun is never pointed at anything. That includes my foot, right? That can include the people down the range, right? That can include anything else. Right? You'll see this a lot of times. People will get done shooting, okay? And Jacob, again, this is a toy, right? But they'll get done shooting, and then they'll just move around, right? And they'll start talking, and they'll say, okay, and they're swinging the gun around like this, right? They don't even think about it. So always important, gun never gets pointed at anybody. Rule number 3, trigger finger, okay? The finger is always off of the trigger in a position that it will not go down to the trigger and shoot. That is all the time. You do not, if I were a lefty, I do not put the finger down until I'm ready to shoot, right? So again, fingers up here, finger comes down, I shoot, fingers should then go back up as I'm done. And then our fourth rule, Jacob, is
know what your target is and what is beyond.
Absolutely. You are always responsible for your weapon, for your bullets, so you should always know what's going on. Now, Jacob, what I want you to do is, to finish this off, I want you to come up. We will go from a holstered position, so I want you to have this in a holster, so in your pocket. You're going to go up. I want you to pull it out, okay? You're going to load it, shoot, one shot, then I want you to take it and holster the weapon again, okay? Or if you're more comfortable, you can lay the weapon on the ground or on the table. How does that sound to you?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So I'll leave the weapon here, and then we'll watch and kind of see how things go. So let's go from a holstered position. Good. Now, one thing I do want you to be careful of, and y'all may have seen on the camera again, when you holstered it, you still move that hand into that position, right? So you're still putting your hand at a greater risk, right? So really, when we holster, if you want to hand me the toy gun, when we holster, we want to bring the weapon and holster it without putting our other hand in the area. But other than that, I think that was a really great job. He practiced good trigger discipline. Was conscious about his target and where he pointed his weapon, and overall showed really good gun safety. So that's the end of this lesson. I hope that this was instructional for everybody, and appreciate you guys for coming along, and hopefully these will be some rules that you'll use the next time you decide that you would like to try a firearm, and so that you can do so being as safe as possible. Thanks for joining us today.